Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the updates and changes to Monk that are going to be coming in Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion, Shadowbringers. Now before we go into the nitty gritty, keep in mind that this footage was obtained from the North American Media Tour. As such, all of it is subject to change. The potencies, the effects, literally nothing could be the same by the time it actually launches. So we're going to have a little watermark so you guys are aware that none of this is final, and with that, let's get started. So first of all, let's at least cover the skills on Monk that either went through no changes at all or went through very minor potency changes, so we're not going to be diving into them too much. Fist of Wind, Earth, and Fire are all there, but aren't really changed. Twin Snakes, True Strike, Snap Punch, Demolish, Meditation, Elixir Field, Form Shift, Tornado Kick, and Brotherhood are all almost completely identical, if not for just minor potency changes. Now on top of that, we also have a list of removed skills. One Hill Punch is finally gone, thank you. But more surprisingly, Steel, Peak, and Howling Fist were both removed, so no more of those two off global cooldowns. Purification, of course, with TP being removed, it only makes sense Purification would be removed as well. Internal Release was also surprisingly removed. While it was kind of annoying to have a 60-second cooldown, it didn't quite always meet up with the two 90-second cooldowns that we had, both of which Riddle of Fire and Brotherhood are still here. I can't say I'm too sad to see it go, but the crit rate, though. There is something that they changed about the job that will somewhat make up for that, however. Also, the individual elemental tackles are no longer there, as the tackle mastery trait has also been changed. Next up, let's go through the skills that had noticeable changes. First up are Bootshine and Dragon Kick. Now with the removal of blunt resistances, Dragon Kick had to get a new effect or it was going to get the axe. Dragon Kick now grants the buff Leaden Fist, which will cause your next Bootshine to do bonus potency. So your Bootshine potency goes from 190 to 290 when under the effect of Leaden Fist. You still get the critical hit from behind. You're not losing that, you're just getting even more damage to make up for the fact that blunt resistances are gone. On top of that, Armor the Destroyer no longer has a silence attached to it and also had its potency significantly increased. It's not really much to say about the potency increase, but it is most noticeable that the increase for being in the correct form is also higher instead of the silence. Now we mentioned that Tackle Mastery had undergone a complete change earlier, so when you eventually get to the Tackle Mastery trait, it will instead change your shoulder tackle to hold up to 2 charges, meaning that you can stack up to 2 uses of it and use them at your own leisure or for burst damage or mobility. Now, Forbidden Chakra didn't undergo any major changes on the surface, but at a closer look, we can see that it now only has a 1-second recast time. This is actually a massive deal, since prior, I believe it had a 5-second recast time, so there were times where you could get your stacks for meditation so quickly from moments like Brotherhood that you just couldn't use them fast enough. It's going to allow you to machine gun out Forbidden Chakras if your group is generating tons of stacks. And finally, Riddles of Fire and Earth, they're still around, but they no longer change your fist form. I suppose with the removal of Tackle Mastery actually changing your tackle, they decided that there was really no point to this. And finally, let's get into the new skills for Monk. Now, while there are only 4 new skills, they do have a fairly significant impact on the way the job is going to be played. The general flow is the same, but executing your large damage burst phases is now going to be a little bit different, as is your way of handling stages where you don't have any targets to hit. The first new skill is 4-Point Fury, which is a level 45 skill that does point-blank AoE damage and extends the duration of Twin Snakes. This is basically a Raptor form AoE, so you now have a full string of AoEs for an AoE rotation. Because of the blunt resistance reduction, you no longer have to include Dragon Kick. Because 4-Point Fury extends Twin Snakes, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And Rockbreaker has always given you stacks of Grease Lightning, so you now can just do this in large pulls very freely, and it should feel a lot less awkward trying to decide between rebuffing and just going through single target abilities versus AoE abilities. So we have Armor the Destroyer with its potency buffs, 4-Point Fury for the Twin Snakes duration, and Rockbreaker's good old Rockbreaker as it always has been. Talking about AoE, we got an AoE Chakra spender in that of Enlightenment. When they got rid of Purification, the one thing I wanted was an AoE Chakra expender, and it is exactly what we got. It basically does damage the same way Howling Fist did. It does damage in a straight line ahead of you at the cost of all 5 of your Chakra stacks, and just like Forbidden Chakra, it only has a 1-second recast time. So during Brotherhood AoE pulls and dungeons, you are going to be Hadoukening all over the place. The third new skill is Untitled, which is basically the monk equivalent of Meditate. It allows you to charge your Grease Lightning stacks and maintain Grease Lightning's duration on a 60-second cooldown. It cancels your auto attack, so it's basically another option for things you can do when there are no targets to hit. And finally, the ability that's likely to have the largest impact on the actual rotation of the monk in endgame content is Six-Sided Star, their level 80 skill. This is a high potency attack that extends Grease Lightning's duration to its maximum. Now that all sounds great, however, it is going to be a skill that extends your global cooldown when you use it. Basically, Six-Sided Star sits on the normal global cooldown, but when you use it, your global cooldown will become the recast time of Six-Sided Star instead, which at base is 5 seconds. So of course, with skill speed and with stacks of Grease Lightning, this is of course going to go down, but it's a pretty big deal when it comes to extending your global cooldown to over 4 seconds. This means that we're probably going to be using it back to back along with tons of off global cooldown abilities during our big Riddle of Fire and Brotherhood moments. You know, with the 1 second recast now on Forbidden Chakra, with the double stacked charges on our shoulder tackle, and of course with still having Elixir Field, thankfully. Hopefully we'll be able to work out something that makes sense. It's really high potency, like almost double the potency of all your other on GCD skills. So I have to imagine that it is going to be worth using repeatedly during these large burst phases. Now, while those are all the changes to the active skills that monks are going to be using, as well as the new ones, we of course had some traits. A lot of the traits aren't very flashy or are just, you know, the same kind of ones we had before, you know, allowing us to get higher stacks of Grease Lightning. Of course, Tackle Mastery, I mentioned earlier. One very important one is Deep Meditation 2, which increases your chance of opening a chakra upon a critical hit from 50% to 70%. So while we did lose internal release for that added crit rate once a minute, it seems they just naturally increased the rate at which we would actually be generating our Forbidden Chakras. Because of this, it makes the whole Six-Sided Star thing a little bit more curious, because now you have a much greater chance of generating them. Is it worth actually going about and slowing down your global cooldown to use Six-Sided Star? If it isn't upon launch, I'd assume they'd fix it, but it's just the potency on Six-Sided Star is so high. On top of that, they changed Riddle of Wind, and of course if you've seen the job action trailer, this should come as no surprise to you, but while you are under your Fist of Wind effect, you will get a 4th stack of Grease Lightning. Now with the Fist of Fire trait, Fist of Fire is 10% damage increase. So on top of the 3 damage stacks, which are also 10% damage increase, the net total damage bonus to your skills should be 40% regardless of Fist of Fire or Fist of Wind. However, when under Fist of Wind and having that 4th Grease Lightning stack, you have a 5% faster GCD. So again, the duration of Six-Sided Star and all of your skills that you're generally using will be way faster. So it seems the best way to decide whether you want to be in Fist of Fire or Fist of Wind is actually to use Fist of Fire up until you have 3 stacks. Then the global cooldown before you actually use your next Grease Lightning generating skill, then you swap to Fist of Wind and generate that 4th stack. It maximizes the uptime of having the 10% damage from Fist of Fire and minimizes the amount of time without it. You'll only ever have 1 GCD that's missing the 10% bonus at that point. There is, of course, the potential use for Tornado Kick. You see, Tornado Kick requires Grease Lightning 3, but while you are in Fist of Wind, it does require all 4 stacks and consume all 4 stacks to use. So there may be situations where you want to be in Fist of Fire in order to use a Tornado Kick without having to expend all 4 stacks that you would otherwise use. But that's it for the Monk video. There really isn't anything else to talk about. A lot of the jobs, they said, got much simpler changes. Monk has always been a job that's gotten relatively simple changes in the expansions because they want to preserve its identity. It's something that I've actually rather enjoyed about the job. There's always new things that have added certain intricacies to the job that didn't exist in the prior expansion, also covering up some of the weaknesses that they may have had. It's been a really fun way of, I guess, developing Monk as time has gone on, and it seems like they've done that again with making our AoE rotation smoother, giving us an AoE Chakra expender, giving us another way of charging Grease Lightning, and starting at max Grease Lightning. That's another thing. With Untitled, I kind of just skimmed over that. You wouldn't just be maintaining Grease Lightning. If you Tornado Kick right before an enemy jumps, Untitled, while the enemy is jumped and you don't have a target, basically will let you start the fight again at 3 without needing to use Perfect Balance. So it opens up all sorts of opportunities to do things that have been way different up to what we've had up to this point. And I'm really, really excited to see how Monk is going to develop with all of this new information and these new skills. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for my Monk video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and check out all the other videos coming out of the Media Tour, because it is a heaping hell of a lot of videos. Anyway, I got to get working on the next one before Wednesday, so I'll see you guys in one of those other videos. And until then, take care.